Let's start with this piece. Now, typically when I begin showing you a work, what I do is I show you the overall work first. So we zoom out so that you can see the entire piece. I'm changing that up a little bit and you'll see why after you realize what this piece is. Instead, we're going to start with some close-up images. Let's first look at this. So you look at this image and you think, oh, that's just a square. It's a cube. And what I've done is I've painted it. Now, when I was painting this, I was actually doing it with some tape so that I could see how perfect an edge can I be. Now, you can even see that there's a little bit of imperfection where some paint has gotten underneath the tape and has just made the edge a little jagged. You'll see some of that as we go, but sometimes artists will get fascinated with things like a straight edge. It's in the first function, how pristine, how perfect, how precise, and that's hard. It's not simply easy. Sometimes drawing a curve is a little bit easier. Here's another image. This, you might say, well, that's a triangle, and it's a triangle on its point. It's 3-dimension. Another image here. Here's a rectangle and a smaller rectangle. And if we look at all of these, you see, oh, they're in shades of pink and purple. Yeah. Now, actually, when you start looking at all of these together, you might start to see something interesting about it, which is another aspect of this piece. Let's look at some other details. Here, another triangle, but suddenly we're going to this gray-green color. And another square, and then suddenly we get to this figure and this figure. Now, I'm going to zoom out so you can see the entire piece. Here's the entire piece. You can see that it's signed. It's signed in 2016. So this was a little piece that I did about 5 years ago. And when you look at it, at first, you probably only saw the geometric patterns. But then suddenly something might make sense of this. And maybe one of these characters suddenly moved beyond just simply being a geometric and becoming a letter. So if we look at this, I was playing with developing a font. Developing a font that was out of geometric patterns. So the top figure is just the word love. And the bottom figure is my version of the word hate. And I chose the colors because I thought when I'm painting it, what color should love be? And I just decided, let's just go with the Valentine's colors of these pinks and reds and purples. So we'll use that part of the spectrum. And then when I got to hate, there was something about this gray, this green, this kind of almost bile-like color, almost, a color of jealousy, just a color of darkness, but not just a black color or a gray color, that there was green within it. So that I played with that as I made these. Now, here I'll show you another image. This is me developing the entire font and some sketches about the font and what that could be. And it's always a curiosity because every so often I'm actually curious in making a new font that's made out of characters of dancers also. And, a font is an interesting thing because it creates a language and it can create, what would be great about this eventually is to make a font file, so to design each of these things for the computer so that you can actually type in these fonts and you can compose an entire message with this kind of meaning. So this is our art encounter, and what we're dealing with is art and language. Yeah, this is kind of a perfect piece for this title. Now, you can say, well, I chose this piece because it is a language, it has words, but the thing that I'll tell you about what we're going to explore is there's more to this than simply words. There's language everywhere in this piece. And what we're going to find is that the language is about symbols, it's about signs, which are signifiers, which hold meaning. And when we put them together, we put them together in a specific way, like we do language. And then once they're put together, we can read them and we can see their meaning. That's what happened to you in this piece, that there were certain signs and symbols that you found, that you saw, and suddenly you were able to see something deeper. What's interesting to me about this work is you'll never be able to look at this again with the kind of innocence of not knowing what it is. Yeah, maybe in a quick glimpse you can say, oh yeah, look at that triangle. So we can push ourselves that way again, but you will always, when you look at this, be able to read it as love and hate, because now you've sort of figured out the key to its meaning and the key to understand and to read this work of art. Now, when we talk about the language of this piece, when I talked about the colors that I chose, that too is part of the language. What is the color of the language of love? What is the color of the language of hate? Now, these can be just arbitrary choices. I could just decide to make other choices with it. And one of the things we're going to realize about language is we like its flexibility, that it's not absolute, that I could re-choose these colors and I could find other colors for these letters, in the same way I could redraw these characters and push them in other ways. I always look at the H and I always wonder, it looks a little bit like an L, so this might say love late to some people. And so I wonder whether that H is the best choice. But if I did knock out that bottom part of it, it would become an H so absolutely. So I keep kind of looking at that and looking at how to develop this font in this way. But again, signs, which are signifiers, symbols, which end up being signs that have meaning, and how do those things come together? That's our art encounter. And welcome to Chapter 6, Language.